All Day Express.
Bill and I began to have some problems, and I had $137.
We're just so ready. And they hadn't even got there, so.
Well, last year I had to have the air conditioner.
So we're so ready to come home.
I did new one in,
I wouldn't have been ready to win.
and so, well.
In this one. Is it time you for,
So the
okay,
place
all right.
got the money.
Guess it's time to get started this morning.
Change,
Um,
Get less mileage.
We've got several people here with us this morning, so I hope we have a lot of input to our lesson. I learned a couple things while I was gone. First and foremost is that Neil's a great Sunday school teacher. Not that I ever doubted that, but I hadn't got to hear him. And the number two thing I learned is that you can hear when people answer questions and stuff, and I didn't think that you could, so that's a good thing. So you all, anything you have to say, your to add to the lesson or whatever is a good thing, because you can actually hear online too when people come. So I was excited to hear that. We'll miss Angie this morning. Hope she's watching out there in Camperland, because she's always got a lot to add to our lesson and stuff, and that's very much appreciated. But this morning we are going to continue with our parables that we've talked about for several weeks now. We had gone to the end of Matthew earlier. Now we're backtracking and going through some of the parables. And we're going to be in Matthew chapter 21, starting in verse 33 this week. But first wanted to read you the golden text. Says, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Says the lesson aim. Men imagine that if they reject Jesus as their master, they can be their own masters, but instead they come to ruin and death. And, you know, as I read that, I was thinking, is that not exactly what Adam and Eve thought when they rejected their life in paradise, when Satan came and told them that, no, you know, the Lord doesn't want you to eat of that tree because he doesn't want you to be like him, to see what he can do. So from the very beginning, this has been the same problem that men face. You know, as we say, it's always easy to blame somebody else to do something that we think we're smarter and that we wouldn't have done it that way, when that's not true at all. You know, they're doing, and we do now, the very same thing that Adam and Eve do. We want to reject the Lord's leadership, thinking that we can do a better job, just give me charge of myself, I can do it, when down through history, and we see from the very beginning, it doesn't work that way. We're not good. We can't make the big choices for ourselves. God knows the end of the book. We don't. But you know, we want to take charge and make these decisions and stuff, but it doesn't work out good for us. So let's go ahead and I'll read the scriptures and then we'll go through them. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 21, verse 33. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I start coughing. I asked Neil if he could take over if I couldn't stop it. But we're going to start Matthew 21, verse 33. It says, "Hear another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard, and hedged it round about, and digged a winepress in it, and built a tower, and let it out to husbandmen, and went into a far country. And when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen, that they might receive the fruits of it. And the husbandman took his servants, and beat one, and killed another, and stoned another. Again he sent other servants more than the first, and they did unto them likewise. But last of all, he sent unto them his son, saying, They will reverence my son. But when the husbandman saw the son, they said among themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him. Let us seize on his inheritance." And they caught him and cast him out of the vineyard and slew him. When the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto the husbandman? I'm going to stop there and then we'll read the second half as we go. So we're starting out the first verse. It's saying there was a certain householder that he planted a vineyard, hedged it round about, and digged a wine press in it, built a tower, and left it out to husbandmen and went to a fair country. So if we look at this husbandman in this parable, or this householder, and we'll compare it because we're farmers. Eddie's not here yet to talk about farm, but say if you have a property and it says he planted a vineyard, hedged it out, so he didn't just take some old piece of property, he fixed this up as best as he could. He's hedged it round about, he's planted a vineyard on it, and he digged a wine press and built a tower. So he's not giving them something shoddy. He's not going and buying an old piece of property that's got an old torn down house and then letting it out to the husbandman and saying, do the best you can with it. He has done everything he could to improve this property, to make it good for those that he's leasing it out for. He has done his best. It says every influence, every institution, the teachings of the prophets, the hymns of David, the worship of the sanctuary. So it said, the Lord has done this for the Jewish people. It says the husbandman represents the rulers of the Jews, but the people as a whole or nation of a church are included. So, sorry about that. This is an example that, this parable is a parable of showing what the Lord has done for the Jewish nation. And if we go back and think back from the beginning, remember when he told Abraham that he would have a nation under him, that it would be more than the sands of the beaches, and think how many people and what a promise. If they say your family is going to grow and it's going to be bigger than the grains of sand. I mean, you think of a thimble full of sand would be how many, untelling the number, even in a thimble full. So he promised them that. We see it in bondage in Egypt. And normally in bondage, you think, people aren't going to be fed well, they're not going to be taken care of well, they're going to use you for all you have, but they're not going to put into you much. They're going to just take your ability to help them build. But as we see, the Lord was with the Jewish nation even at that time. They grew to millions of people. And as we read in the Old Testament, no matter what happened when he started taking it, when the Egyptians started taking away from them and expected more, they were able to produce it. And it was not on their own accord. The Lord was with them. So he continually helped them to prosper no matter where they were. That they did the things that got them into this bondage, but the Lord was with them. And we knew that at times when they cried out to the Lord, when they would break over their stubbornness and cry out to the Lord, he would hear them. He got them out of bondage. We see all he did to get them out of bondage. He destroyed the Egyptian army, the Pharaoh, over them. So, this parable is going back to remind these people this is what the Lord has done and has continually done for this nation. So, this parable is directly talking about them, saying, the Lord, he has fixed this place. He has done everything he could to prepare, which he has done for the Jewish nation. It says, too, the Jewish leaders were God's husbandmen. So are Christian workers today. So this is not just a parable a long time ago. This is a parable of what he's done for us as well. He's prepared this vineyard, and we are to go out and spread the gospel and make sure that all in the world hear and understand this. So it's not a charge that was let out to people back in Bible days, but it continues till today. And verse 34 says, "And when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen that they might receive the fruits of it." So we know when we plant a garden, when we spend the time doing that, and Neil does that, you expect to get fruit from it. I mean, you're not gonna spend a lot of time if you've got tomato plants that you've done whatever and they don't grow, or you fertilize and you water them and they're dead all the time. That's not what you want in your garden. I mean, you expect that you're going to get something for your labors for that garden. And the lesson writer says God expects fruits from his vineyard. God gives freely, but he looks for a return. So, he does expect us to work because we're being given a great prize, and he expects us to draw others to that also. And in verse 35 it says, "And the husbandman took his servants and beat one and killed another and stoned another." So he's relating that back. The lesson writer says that in the Jewish church, God's messengers had been ill-treated and put to death. The Bible says, "Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted?" So, the Lord sent out, as we read through the Old Testament, he sent out prophets when they would start sliding and not doing his will, letting other nations, he told them, one thing that I was going to mention before, remember he gave them the land of Canaan. It was called the land of milk and honey. So he had saved the best portion of the earth and gave to these people. That they went into there, they said there would be houses that they didn't build, vineyards that they didn't plant. So this was a land that had been tamed. The people were productive on that land, and it was a good land. And he was bringing this in and giving it to them. And we know but he told them not to mingle with the people once they got there. That they were to keep themselves pure, and they didn't listen. And as we know over time, they continually didn't listen to what he had to say. And he sent prophets to give them his word, to warn them, I guess is the best of you're backsliding, you're not listening to the Lord, you're not doing the things. And he had their best interests at heart. Not unlike parents, sometimes our children and us as children, I'll say, we won't say our children do anything that we didn't do. We think we know it all, especially once we get to 15 or 16, we know it all. There's nothing else in the earth to be known that we don't know the best of. But our parents continually warn us, and not because they don't want us to do something and have fun or try something. They know the end result of these things. They've been there, done that, and they're doing it for your own good. But sometimes you don't listen to them, and that's the Lord treats us as our Father, as our earthly Father, only one that is all knowing, and He sent these prophets to warn the Jewish nation, but they didn't accept them. They killed them in many cases. They didn't want to hear what they had to say. They just wouldn't hear what they had to say. And in verse 36 it said, "Again, he sent other servants more than the first, and they did unto them likewise." I want to read in here that it says, "God's loving kindness was not wearied out with the husbandman's cruelties and violence. Each step of their wickedness and obstinacy was met with renewed mercy, with fresh call to repentance." It says, "The leaders of Israel governed for their own advantage and not for the glory of the Lord." So that's a problem that has started from the beginning, that continues to be the seed of wickedness in all of us, that we you know, they weren't necessarily thinking these leaders of the nation as a whole, but they were thinking of their gain, of their their position in society. They didn't want to lose it. And, you know, even if it meant leading other people into ruin with them, they wanted to keep the position that they had gained, and it didn't matter, you know, what the Lord, they didn't have sight of that. Verse 37 says, "But last of all, he sent unto them his son, saying, they will reverence my son." I'm going to go ahead and read 38, it says, "But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and let us seize on his inheritance. And they caught him, and cast him out of the vineyard, and slew him." So, if we look at the husbandman, and you know, and it's always good to kind of, or for me, to think, put yourself in these situations that these parables tell. You know, the husbandman owned the land. There was nothing that these, not the husbandman, sorry, the householder is what the Lord is referred to. He owned the land. He fixed the land up to the best of its, you know, that it could be done. There was nothing that these people could give him that he needed. It was all on one-sided. He was giving everything for them. They were giving him nothing. He didn't need them to be this. The offer was one-sided, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was not a mutual, you give me this, I'll give you some. You know, the householder was laying out, here's everything I have at your disposal. And that's what the Lord has done. And these people, these husbandmen who had already trampled and not done what they were supposed to do, he continually gave to them. And then it says, I'll give them my son, which is, if you think personally, like I say, if you gave your child for them, or that's the most precious thing that you have, that he's willing to say, here, I'll give you this too. So he's given everything to these ungrateful people that hadn't taken care of what they had to this point. And he's saying, you know, the heir, they'll treat him better. They won't do the things they previously done. But because of the wickedness and the evilness in their heart, that didn't matter to them either. They just, it was all about me. It was all about this heir. They didn't want him to take any of the importance of the position that they got. They didn't want to share it with anybody. They were happy with the status quo that they had gotten. And even if it was the heir, or even, you know, the Lord himself, as we know, came down, it wasn't good enough to trade what they thought they had built up in earthly status and position, that they still, that it didn't, their hearts were so hardened to it, and they were so looking inward at themselves, that it says, in fact, the possession which the rulers coveted was supremacy over the minds and conscience of men. They wished to lord it over God's heritage, to retain their rights and prerogatives in the present system. Says they felt no security in their possession of authority while he was present and working in their midst. Were he removed, their position would be safe, their claims undisputed. So it was just the opposite when this heir was with them. Instead of feeling reverence and awe that I keep forgetting this householder, as it's called, as the Lord's calling this, has given his heir, they felt it as, while he was present, that they couldn't have the supremacy that they had, that they were intimidated, I guess, or they didn't want him on the scene with them, that they felt better if he was removed from this, and that they didn't want the householder's heir to be on the scene. So they were, still so caught up in their own thoughts. Okay, so I'll read the rest of the verses, starting in verse 40 through 46. It says, "When the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto these husbandmen? They say unto him, he will miserably destroy those wicked men, and will let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their season. Jesus saith unto them, did he never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner? This is the Lord's doing, and is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore say I unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. And whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. And when the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he spake of them. But when they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the multitude, because they took him for a prophet." Okay. So, as we know in the parables, Jesus usually is trying to convey a lesson to his people. And this one portion of this parable reminds us back. Do you all remember when we were studying about King David? And when he had taken Bathsheba for his wife, and remember, he had done every dirty deed that could be done. I mean, he stayed back from war when he should have been out with his men. He took a man's wife. He called the man back from war when he found out she was pregnant to try to cover up what he had done. The man didn't, out of loyalty, the man did not go to his wife at the time, and then David had him killed. And at that time, it seemed like that it was a pretty good cover-up, that, he was the king, and all these things had been done, and nobody generally knew what was going on. I guess I wonder why his son was such a good soldier, and he was sent out, to the front line to be killed, and David kind of thought that he had covered over everything really good, and, was in the clear. But we remember Nathan, the prophet, came and told him a parable, told him about a farmer that had many animals, many sheep, rich, versus one that had one little lamb that was all he had, and that he had a great love for that. And that this rich farmer, when he had need to slaughter lamb, instead of taking one of his hundreds, he took the one. And remember, David said that he should, that he should die for that was wrong what he had done. When Nathan told David, it's like, I'm talking about you. David didn't realize that Nathan knew just what had happened, just the things that David had done. So David passed his own sentence. He didn't. So we see here these leaders at the time were listening to Jesus, plus a crowd of many of the Jewish people. It says, when the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto those husbandmen? So he's giving them a chance right then. It's like, well, you've heard this story, you've heard that these husbandmen had it all given to them in a platter. They didn't take it. They abused their privileges, and even when the son was sent, they abused him and killed him as well. They abused. So they had it all laid out before him, and then he's giving them the question of, what should he do? And in 41 it says, they say unto him, he will miserably destroy those wicked men, and will let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits of their season. So this is talking about them. This is talking about the Jewish leaders and the Jewish people of that time, that they see in somebody else what miserable wretches and how they had acted. And he says, he will miserably destroy those wicked. So they're saying it until themselves that they should be destroyed and that other husbandmen should be led into the vineyards.
It seems like, felt like in this day and time, you got these evangelists and preachers that are on TV, they're doing it to prosper for themselves instead of really working for the Lord.
True.
So, they're getting their riches off of God's word.
Yes.
Instead of serving God, they're using Him as their front.
True. Yes. Yes. And they're liking the power and the people and the leadership that
They're liking worldly things that they're getting, the money, the fame, the probably like cars, planes, whatever. Instead of doing it for the right thing, they're doing it for the wrong reason, but they're trying to get the riches for themselves, I guess.
Yes, off of,
Profit in themselves instead of really trying to help others.
yes, absolutely.
Another deal, my fascination on these people,
Yeah.
step on me all the time. I mean, they're involved in a lot of things, They're going here and there doing messages and taking trips on boats and all, but they have a new book out every week.
Yeah,
Which is send in and get the book. And it's almost like we said, like the world, you send in this much, we'll give you this much.
yeah.
And that's a big thing. It astonished me how they can send out my book every week.
Yeah. And it's like you say, I think you kind of get wound up into maybe you started out with the right motives, and then once it builds up so big and there is the money
It needs to
involved.
be commercial.
Yes,
Yeah,
and more people, and I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but I really pay attention now. If somebody's delivering a message, and if you hear as they're doing it, they got their eye on the wrong subject. It kind of turns to, they start building themselves up and forget that it's not me, it's not you, it's the Lord that we're here to uplift and not myself. But once I think sometimes you get reverenced as a leader, and which we should have. I mean, we should have respect
They're putting
and reverence.
themselves before the cross instead of behind the cross.
Good, yes, absolutely, that's perfect. Well, Neil, get up here.
How you doing?
They're doing it, so, and once people, for lack of a better word, pet you or, always, you're so good and you're doing this, and sometimes it can, that you can kind of start puffing up over that, and then of course when the big paychecks come in and stuff, you can get your eye really off that. And and a lot of these evangelists that have the opportunities, I'd say it's hard to stay unless they stay really close to the Lord, that the world, and Satan's going to want to pull them away because they're going to have such influence, being on television, being in front of so many people, that they're going to be a big target, that he's going to want to use them to turn people who might try to listen to something and then they say, all they want is my money, or, they're not really so interested in my salvation. And that's a big gain on Satan's part, to use God's people against him. And, but not only them, but we have to be careful of that too, that we don't get lulled into putting ourselves in front of the cross. As Neil said, that we keep our eyes on the Lord, solely on him. And in 42 it said, Jesus said unto them, did you ever read in the scriptures that the stone which the builders rejected The same has become the head of the corner. That is the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes. So these leaders that he's talking to, and and he says, did you ever read in the scriptures? He knows who he's talking to. It's no secret to him what's going on or what's going to go on at any point. But, he has to put things back to us, as Nathan did to David, to let them know, I know you, I know what you're thinking, I know what's part of it. He knew these people had read the scriptures. It was these leaders' job as leaders of the Jewish community to know these scriptures. They had studied them, they had been schooled on them. That's what they did. That was what they were very aware of. That they knew the scriptures, they knew the prophecy of the coming of the Lord. And that's why I always think when Jesus was on earth, and that they continually, as they did here, they were trying to trick him, to catch him into something so they could put him to death. They knew all of the prophecy of his coming. They knew the events that would be fulfilled during the time. And how could you be in the earthly presence of Jesus and not know who he was? That just to me is kind of unbelievable, unless you are so hardened as these people that you didn't, as we saw when they sent the son, that they didn't want him, in this parable, they didn't want him there, that they wanted him gone so they could continue to do as they had done. And this was what these leaders were about to do to him. He's prophesying, he's trying to make them hear, and when you can hear and understand, but until you change your heart, it's no difference than if you didn't hear and understand. When he was doing it, if there's no change, even thinking about people at a church service that they hear the pastor, they feel the tug of Jesus, and they truly hear what's being said, but they won't take that step forward and make that change. And that's exactly where these people were in this parable. They knew who the Lord was truly in their hearts, but they didn't want him. It was going to take away.
This morning when I was drinking my coffee, I was watching a hunting show, and they had you got this scripture on there and stuff like that too. And the part that really stuck with me, he said, "Here on earth, a sinner who's not saved, this is as close to heaven as he'll ever get." And then it said, somebody who's saved, this is as close as to hell that you're going to get. So,
Never thought of it that way.
yeah, I didn't either. I mean, it stuck with my head, but it was saying, a lost sinner, this is as close as to heaven as they're going to get.
Because it's going to be bad.
This is as far as they're going to get, the closest to heaven.
Yeah.
And if we still stay with the Lord, this is as close as we're going to get to hell.
So it's better to see the riches of heaven,
Exactly.
but it's for some reason there's a stubbornness or a pride sometimes that we won't make that decision, like you say.
Our deal, this is the riches of heaven. If you with the worldly things.
Yes. And, once you use them up.
If you're going to go for money, greed, and all that good stuff, we used to say man-made wealth.
Yeah, temporary,
Yeah.
but leads
Can't
to
live with it.
but to a much more destruction than we ever had. I always remember Brother Bowman would tell us that you never see a hearse pulling something behind it.
Pulling a U-Haul.
Pulling a U-Haul,
Yeah.
You don't take any of these things.
Have bubblers, so.
Yeah. Therefore said I unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. So he gets a little bit more personal here. He's been talking in parable, telling them what it has, but in this one we say, therefore say I unto you. So he hones it into them then. There's no question to them that this parable was about them, that they have given their own sentence, and now he's making it unquestionable to them that I was talking to you. And it said in verse 44, and whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. And when the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he spake of them. So they're a little bit smart. But when they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the multitude, because they took him for a prophet. So he's telling them, I've given you every opportunity that there was available. As we read in the very first verse of this parable in Matthew 21, verse 33, says a householder which planted a vineyard, planted them in this nice land, hedged it round about. Remember when they were moving into Canaan, he fought their battles for them. They weren't a real trained up army at the beginning. They won a lot of battles against trained up army men. So it says, I've hedged you, I've kept you safe, I've been about you, digged a wine press, built a tower. So he did it. He's reminding them, all these things I did for you, I set you apart as my people, but you've taken advantage of it. So I'm going to give this to other people. Thank goodness we're the other people. Yeah. So there's a blessing for us in it, that we're a part of this, and that we were given this. But then going back to what we said earlier, when he gives, he expects, and when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants, and they might receive the fruits. So we're in that position. He expects the fruits from the new people he's given it to. But it's saying, these Pharisees, finally comes into their head, he's speaking about us. But this is where it says, heard these parables, they perceived that he spake of them. But when they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the multitude, because they took him for the prophet. So he's told them all this. He's laid it out before them. And what do? Please forgive us. Let us do better. No, not this much. That they liked too good where they were, so that they continued their plot to kill him. And the only reason they didn't get him right then, it wasn't within his plan to end his ministry right at that very minute. But the people that were listening and actually hearing Jesus, they were fearful of them at that time, because they were hearing what he had to say. And these Pharisees didn't, it was all because of their personal safety, personal place that they were in. They didn't want to rock the boat right then. So that they heard, they knew who he was, but they wouldn't make any changes for him, and that's, we can condemn them for it, but there's many now that do the same, that make the same choices. So, like I say, it's always, when you read the Bible, it's not a story of old. It's a story of all generations, and a story of choices that we all have, that we all have to make at the time. So we really need to read it. And when he changes it to you, that this book is speaking to us to make sure that we're where we need to be, because eternity is at stake for our choices. Does anybody have anything to add? that we didn't? Andy and Janet, do y'all have any answers to questions we're about to go on? Okay, so what is represented by the vineyard? That he, you know, when we began, he has set this vineyard and planted this vineyard and hedged it around for people.
Represents of a perfect place, I guess you could
Perfect.
say, it's fruitful, I guess, it's gonna make fruit every year, built perfect. I guess.
Okay, and the good offer that's on the table. What had been done for Israel? What did God do for Israel over the history of their,
He tried to get to the perfect place.
yeah? He gave them this land of milk and honey.
He gave them everything possible.
Yes, yes. Kind of like spoiled children sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes you don't appreciate something given to you that you haven't had to fight for. Who do the husbandmen represent?
The rulers of the Jews.
The people that were in charge of taking care of what this group of people were given, and they kind of lost sight of what their job was.
High priest.
Yes, yes, the high priests, and yes, that were in charge. What fruits does God expect from his vineyard? And it does say expect.
I think it's love and joy and obedience.
Obedience, yes, yes. And to share that and to make it known that this is part of his society. And why did the owner send his only son?
That's like God said his own son.
It was the ultimate love that somebody could show to you. He was willing to give it to secure them. It says, why did the Jewish leaders wish to kill Jesus?
And his inheritance.
Yeah, that they didn't want, that they loved their spot.
He was taking their fame.
Yes,
They were jealous.
yes, yes, that they were happy with status quo. How did Jesus show them the justice of the coming punishment?
Pretty much told them, get on board,
Yeah, and he let them make that,
yeah.
to say that this was the just desert that they deserved, they,
Leadership out.
yeah, that they even pronounced it on themselves. What's the lesson of the rejected stone?
I'm thinking of the rejected stone is like a foundation. I mean, your foundation's only gonna be as strong as the weakest stone.
And somebody's gonna inherit this foundation, The Jewish people gave it up, and the Gentiles were brought in. So, you have traded out the blessings that were meant for you, that were set up for you, that you didn't accept. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.